With the rear doors done, it's time to work on the fronts. We've got the K2s all cleaned up and looking spiffy. Now, we kind of have a similar problem that we ran into with the rear doors in that we don't have the factory speaker. What do we do? Now, they're both 5x7s, true, and so we could easily take that same piece that we used for the rear and put it on the front. And if it was any other speaker smaller wise than something like this giant guy here, we'd probably be doing that. But this is a big boy speaker. We've put these in the front door of one of these before. We know the problems that we're gonna run into, and that is the window, this is gonna hit it. It's just gonna happen. So we have to move this out. Well, when we move it out, the door panel's gonna hit it. It's like a lose-lose all the way around. The last time we did one of these, we figured out we needed to come up with a shape like this because we needed a little bit more room and a little bit more surface area. The other thing too is we also had a bunch of cut, they went like, you have to trim on the top and bottom, but they went ham on this thing. They just nibble it all up and it looked terrible. That gave us a couple ideas in that it was how to make a better bracket for that front door and give us some material here to help us get the speaker lined up in place and also countersink it with enough material so that we get the right depth on the speaker. And then this was the acrylic piece that we made. It ended up being 1/8 of an inch bigger, and that was so that we could put another spacer on here and have more room. Let's take a look at the door and I'll show you this on there, and then we'll take this over to the router and we're gonna cut this out 1/2 inch. We end up going a little bit deeper down on the bottom side than we do on the top side just because of the way the factory grill covers this. Now we kind of get an idea of what this is doing. Now the reason why it's oblong like this is because obviously we need to cover that hole that is right here. And we wanted to make sure, because of the K2, it's a much bigger driver, that there's a good 1/2 inch of area on this metal so that it makes a nice bond to the door and it's not flimsy and there's no weak parts. It's a heavy speaker. Want a nice big thick mount for it. Now that we know that, let's go over to the router and start making these. For this, we've cut 2 pieces of 1/2 inch blown PV. We have template tape. We need to stack them on top of one another. Next, we need to get this bracket attached. I need to drill a hole here in the center for my router bit to come up through. We use a Mobile Solutions quad bearing spiral cut bit that's 1/4 inch, because they do make a 1/2 inch version too. It's very scary. It's this guy right here. Ooh, yeah, animal. My template has all these little holes in here. I need to recreate them in this before I separate it. This gets us the first piece that we need for the speaker bracket in our door. This bracket here is going to screw into the door via these 4 screw points. The speaker is going to sit on top of this, so I need to countersink those in. When countersinking into the blown PVC, you don't have to go too crazy on it because the screw will pull in some, just enough to where it gets it started. It'll make it flat. Even though I'm just test fitting it right now, putting on the foam adds some gapping. It'll stick it out just a little bit more, and we want to make sure we account for that. With the panel mounted in place, we have to test fit it. You can see I'm not happy, which I kind of knew it wasn't going to be, but let's see why. So this brings it out 1/2 of an inch, but these little guys right here are the problem. When the speaker goes in, this hits the magnet. These are all counter flushed in. We added in that room, but now we need to figure out how far from here, which we knew we were going to have to do that. Let's be honest, we knew we were going to have to do that. How far do we need to move this out? And there's actually a pretty simple trick for that. As you can see, there's a screw hole here and a screw hole here. And what I've done is I took this screw and I put it into here, and then I took my speaker and I kept it in there, and it would just come in and out like this until it stopped hitting. And once I did that, I knew I was about 1/4 of an inch. So now I need to make a spacer that is 1/4 of an inch that will attach onto this and move that speaker out the next amount. Now, once all this is out, then we have to deal with this, which is a whole nother animal. We have to make sure the speaker fits into the door first, and then we'll worry about that. We know how big the hole has to be because we've got a hole in the thing already. Just like we have this template here, it's awesome to have circle templates like this. You can get a set of them like this from Mobile Solutions. We have both sets of theirs that allow us to easily, instead of having to fire up the laser and do this, I can just come over here, grab my stack, set them onto my speakers like this, be like, yep, that's the one. And now I can double side tape this down to some 1/4 inch and make my spacer. And it'll sit just like this on top of the black piece that I currently have in the door. Just like the bigger pieces, double-sided tape. Pull for the center. Readjust the height. What I need to do is attach this to the spacer in the door. To do that, I'm going to use some of this red Tessa double-sided tape, as well as the screws themselves. All sticky gooey. Let's go get into the door. To screw it in, I'm going to use some 3/4 inch screws. That will go all the way through both pieces. It won't go all the way through the 1/2 inch, but I mean, it's going to go through the 1/4 inch and then a substantial deepness into the 1/2 inch. I don't need it poking out of the backside. I did put these 2 screws in, as you just saw. I'm not to that point yet. Point I'm to is getting the door panel on and figuring out what area I need to remove from the door panel. The first thing you need to do is remove this metal grill. There's 2 clips on this side, 1 big clip on this side, 2 on top and bottom, and then it just pops right off. Get the door panel on nice and tight like it is going to be forever and ever. And now we can look at the problem we see. With it spaced out properly, remember it's a 5x7, not a 6.5, and it's got a 5x7 hole. This area right here and this area right here need to be removed so that the speaker won't get screwed up. If I grab the same template I just made that extension out of, I can use a black marker and I can trace the area that I need to remove, both the inside and the outsides. If I have room and I can come all the way down to this part here, like down here, I want to do that so the door will go in more, but like in this top area here I can't, so I'll probably end up going somewhere between there because I still need to make sure that that grill snaps back into place. To remove this area here, I used my roto zip with a spiral cut bit. When you're doing that, you want to come from underneath, not from the top. The reason why is it could buzz out and you scratch the top of it, so definitely don't do that. I was able to get all the way to my outside line here, which is great, and then I just followed this straight line here. Let's get it on and see how we did. This will allow the speaker to move freely and come through the grill, so we'll get all that luscious Focal sound all out of the door with no restriction. The other thing too is we won't need any fast rings or anything like that because we've moved that speaker out into this area here. Now the factory grill sits off of this like another 1/2 inch, 3/4, so we don't have to worry about it touching this. It's out a lot. This is kind of nice because we've moved it out as far as we can into the car. We won't have to worry about any of that back wave getting around to the back side of this speaker. And that brings up an interesting point for those of you guys who are like, oh, fast rings or something like that. The more you can bring the speaker out safely to the door panel, in some cases through the door panel if you want to make an external grill, the better it is. It reduces the need for, let's say, the fast ring. And after all, what the fast ring is doing is filling in all that space between where the speaker stops and the door panel begins. If you move the speaker out more, reduces the need for that. Pretty cool.